Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me go last so I could write down some thoughts and steal thoughts from others. My name is Biz Stone, and I am an internet guy. I like to think of myself as an internet guy who believes in the triumph of humanity with a little bit of help from technology. I used to work at Google, and I had the distinct feeling that their ordered list was number one, technology, number two, people. And my ordered list is number one, people, number two, technology. So I've been building these large-scale collaborative networks for almost 15 years now, working on an early prototypical social network, and then moving to Google and working on Blogger, and then moving from Blogger and into Twitter and watching Twitter grow. And some of the, well, I learned a lot of things, but a couple of key things that I learned in my experience. One of them is that people are basically good, and when you give them the right tools, they will prove that to you over and over again. So people are good and they want to do good things. I mean, we couldn't have cities and societies if people weren't basically good. So that's the way that these large-scale, hundreds of millions of people networks can even work, is that most of the people on them are good, and there's only some bad actors which get sort of stamped out by the good. So because of that, and because of what some of these folks have been talking about today, we've entered into a world where to borrow the phrase democratization, information has been democratized. Everyone has access to practically all the information they need to make decisions that are good, and represent decisions that they feel make them a better person. So I guess what I'm saying is that the democratization of information has created a more powerful consumer, in that now consumers can decide what brands or services they want to choose, not just based on the information about the brand or the ingredients in the brand, but the people, the executives behind the brand, the way they live their lives, the way they spend their free time, what philanthropies they're interested in, what is the company philosophy? What does the company itself work towards? Does the company have a cause? In fact, I dug up some research. It's a little old. I think it's a year old, but it was Cone research I found on my phone just as we were talking at lunch, that says 94% of consumers are likely to switch brands to one that supports a cause. 93% would buy a product associated with a cause, and 65% already have. 93% would boycott a company for irresponsibility, and 56% already have. And I ended that with good companies that do good do well. So I've developed my own sort of philosophy that the future of marketing is philanthropy or altruism, and that the companies that don't get on board with this, especially with millennials, are going to be scratching their heads in a few years, wondering why, why this particular brand of sugar water is outselling theirs, and it's because they're working with Habitat for Humanity or something like this, and the smarter, educated, moneyed consumers aren't just looking for a product; they're looking for meaning behind the product that they're buying. So I've also been witness to a few other things. When I talked about the triumph of humanity, I've been witness to something that blew my mind in 2007, so I might as well share it with you. It's almost an evolution of humanity in a way. And this goes to demonstrate that the democratization and speed of information has really changed the way that consumers can make decisions about corporate reputation. And that was at a conference in Austin, Texas in 2007 when Twitter was nascent. We didn't have very many people using the service, but the people that were using the service were the type of people that went to this conference. And so we had a very super saturated group of Twitter users out at a conference. And one of the people who was using Twitter sent out a tweet that said that the pub he was at was too loud and crowded, and if he wanted, and if colleagues wanted to join him at this quieter pub, they should follow him, and they can do so. In the 7 minutes it took him to walk to that pub, it had filled to capacity and there was a line out the door. So the plan totally backfired. But what it demonstrated, and the reason the sort of the hairs on the back of my neck stood up and tingled, was the fact that what he had done was something that is not normally achievable by human beings. It's something we see in nature. What had happened was he sent out one tweet to his followers. They then thought that was a good idea, sent it out to their followers, and then their followers to their followers, creating an instant sort of flocking of people to this one spot within minutes. And it conjured up the impression of a flock of birds moving around an object in flight, something that looks incredibly choreographed, incredibly practiced, and yet it's really very rudimentary. It's individuals reacting to each other's information in real time that allows the many to suddenly become one for a moment and then go back to becoming many again. And that was what Twitter was enabling people to do. And so the reason I got so excited wasn't because this was a party and that they all decided to move to a different pub. It was because I thought, what if this were to happen in a more important situation, like a disaster or something like that? So we went back actually 2 days later and formed the company. But with regard to what we're talking about today, it also means that reputations can be earned or broken in extremely short amounts of time. And I want to stress the earned part, I guess, because a lot of the talk around this sort of stuff is about how you can insulate your corporate reputation or try to stay out of the fray. And really the only way to get ahead is to completely embrace it and learn how to use it and work with it. And I've seen that happen on a bunch of times, and I've seen it happen very successfully. I'll use an old example, but it's a good one. When we were first getting started with Twitter, we saw one of the first brands to get on the service was JetBlue, the airline JetBlue. And they were doing it wrong. They were basically sending out little 140-character text, what do you call them, press releases. And they were dry. And the person who was running the Twitter account for JetBlue kept doing this, and finally I imagine they had some kind of a meltdown because they finally wrote a tweet that said, "What do you people want from me?" And that was their sort of pivotal moment, because that was the one tweet that got the most @replies out of anything they'd ever done, and it was an outpouring of people saying, "That's exactly what we want from you. We want you to show us that you're a person." And that taught me that there's a lot of value in vulnerability. When you broadcast yourself as bulletproof, then of course you're going to be taken down when you make even the smallest slip up. But if you frame your reputation up as somewhat vulnerable, not perfect, people gathered together, working towards something, working on something, I think you you buy goodwill and you that you can spend later. It makes me think of the actor Harrison Ford. One of the reasons he's one of the more compelling actors, at least for me, is that whenever he's in a movie where there's people shooting at him or something, he's always got this look on his face like, oh my God, I really wish that these people weren't shooting at me, and I want to get out of here, and this is scary. Instead of, Mr. Macho, like, go ahead and shoot, you'll probably miss. And I think that vulnerability that he's showing us is making him more endearing, and I think the same thing can be said for brands, and I think that translates into this new world where information is democratized, humans are flocking like birds, information is traveling at incredible speeds all around the world. You can stumble really, and you can fall really hard on all of these new mediums, but you need to be willing to fail spectacularly if you want to be willing to succeed spectacularly anyways. So the only real way to do it is to jump in, and the only advice I would offer on how to jump in is to explore any of these new services that come out by listening and learning first, and then participating. And then when you do participate, you participate as a human, not as a bulletproof brand. And I think that's where you'll have the most success. So I just want to end with a reiteration of the point that I really believe that altruism has a compound interest. So a lot of people do philanthropy wrong. They think they need to be comfortable and well off before they throw money at a problem later in life. And I think the same is true for corporations themselves. And that's the wrong way of thinking, because the earlier you get started, the more impact you'll have over time. So I always advise startups and young people to just get involved in some capacity, because over the next 20 years, they'll make a lot more difference than they would when they think they're comfortable, which, by the way, they never really will, because they'll always want more. And so I think that works well into my theory that the future of reputation, the future of marketing and branding, rests on what the company as a whole does that has meaning, and that meaning, those meaningful actions will attract better, not just more moneyed consumers and more consumers who are thoughtful, but better employees, people who want to work for a company that just by going to work, they're doing something good. So do good things, everybody. Have a nice day.